the warm green stillness of summer, on a small country farm bordered by reeds and water, a mother duck sat waiting upon her nest. Around her, the pond glimmered beneath the sun. Dragonflies drifted low over the water, and the world seemed gentle and complete. One by one, the eggs began to crack. Small ducklings tumbled into the light, soft, yellow, and full of life. The farmyard admired them at once, yet one large egg remained unopened, and the mother duck, growing tired and uneasy, wondered why this last child kept the whole world waiting. At last the shell split, and from it came a duckling unlike the others. He was larger, awkward, and covered not in golden down, but in dull gray feathers. The mother duck blinked in surprise. The other ducklings stared. Even the sunlight that had seemed so kind a moment before now fell upon him with a colder honesty. Still, his mother led him toward the water, hoping that once he swam, all would be well. And indeed, he swam beautifully. Yet beauty of movement could not protect him from eyes that had already decided he did not belong. The farmyard was not a gentle place. There, everything strange was quickly noticed, and everything noticed was quickly judged. The hens pecked at him, the ducks pushed past him. Even his brothers and sisters who had hatched beside him wished that he would go away. "He is too large," said one. "Too ugly," said another. Day after day, the little gray duckling lowered his head and wandered from corner to corner, hoping to escape the stares, the sharp beaks, and the laughter. But ridicule followed him like a shadow, and loneliness settled into his heart before he was old enough to understand it. One evening, when the air had turned violet and the farmyard noises were fading into dusk, the duckling could bear it no longer. He slipped through the hedge and fled. Behind him lay the only home he had ever known. Before him stretched open marshes, dark pools, whispering grasses, and an uncertain freedom. He did not know where he was going. He knew only that he could not remain where every face had taught him shame. So he ran and stumbled through the wild reeds beneath the evening sky, carrying nothing with him but fear, hunger, and the desperate hope that somewhere in the wide world there might be a place for him. In the marshland he found wild ducks resting among the reeds. They did not mock him as the farmyard had, yet neither did they welcome him with warmth. They looked him over and said that, ugly though he might be, he was no concern of theirs, so long as he did not ask for too much. It was not kindness, only indifference, but to the duckling it felt almost merciful. For a short while he remained there, half hidden among water and grass, listening to the wind move through the marsh. It was a poor sort of peace, but it was peace all the same. That peace shattered one morning with the crack of gunfire. Hunters came through the reeds, and the sky filled with wings, panic, and falling birds. Dogs rushed through the water, their jaws wet and terrible. The duckling flattened himself into the mud, shaking with fear, certain each moment would be his last. One great dog stopped directly before him, baring its teeth. But after a long, dreadful pause, it turned and ran on. When the danger passed, the duckling did not feel lucky. He felt only smaller than ever. Even death, he thought, had looked at him and found him too poor a prize to take. Cold and exhausted, the duckling wandered until he found shelter in a poor little cottage where an old woman lived with her cat and her hen. At first he believed he had reached a place of safety, but the cottage had its own narrow laws. The cat valued only what could purr and arch its back. The hen valued only what could lay eggs. When the duckling spoke of water, of wind, and of his longing to swim in open ponds, they laughed at him and called him foolish. Once again he was told that the shape of his heart did not fit the shape of the world around him. So he left the cottage too, and autumn came with a long gray sadness. The leaves curled and fell. The reeds turned brown. The ponds grew colder each day. The duckling drifted through lonely waters and empty fields, belonging nowhere and remembered by no one. Yet something in him still endured. He watched the world carefully, as if beauty might yet reveal a secret he had not understood. The ache of rejection remained, but now it was joined by a quieter endurance. He no longer expected welcome. He simply kept going, because there was nothing else to do. One evening, as the sky burned pale and cold above the water, the duckling heard a sound unlike any he had known before. He looked up and saw a flock of great white birds flying across the fading light. Their wings moved with a grace so pure that it seemed almost sorrowful. They were swans. The duckling had never seen such creatures, yet at the sight of them something stirred deep inside him, a longing too powerful to name. He called out toward them with a cry that surprised even himself. Then they vanished into the distance, leaving wonder behind them like a wound. Winter came hard and merciless. Ice spread across the ponds. Snow buried the fields. To keep from freezing, the duckling had to paddle without rest through a shrinking patch of water. Night after night, the cold closed in around him. At last, he grew too weak to move, and the water froze fast about his body. There he might have died, had a passing farmer not broken the ice and carried him home. But even rescue brought little comfort. Frightened in the noisy house, the duckling flapped wildly among children, buckets, and milk pans before escaping once more into the winter storm. The winter seemed endless, but the duckling endured it somehow. In ditches, under hedges, beside half-frozen streams, he survived by the smallest margin, thin with hunger and worn by the weather. Yet beneath all that hardship, life persisted. The sky slowly softened. The wind lost some of its cruelty. The ice began to loosen its hold. Though he did not know it, the world was making room for change. The duckling, who had spent so long bowing beneath rejection, carried on into spring with no expectation of joy, only the weary instinct to keep living one more day. Then one morning spring returned. The air smelled of wet earth and opening leaves. The water shone clear again. The duckling, no longer small, spread his wings and felt a strength in them that had not been there before. He rose into the air almost without meaning to, startled by his own power, and flew across gardens and bright new fields until he came upon a broad stretch of water where 3 white swans floated beneath blossoming branches. At once, he recognized the noble birds from his autumn dream, and the old longing awakened in him, softer now, but deeper. He knew their beauty. He knew his own long history of rejection, and so, believing he would rather be struck down by such splendid creatures than continue his lonely wandering, he bowed his head and glided toward them. If they attacked him, he would accept it. If they drove him away, it would be no worse than all the other refusals he had endured. But the swans did not turn from him in contempt. They swam closer, serene and unafraid, their bright eyes resting on him not with cruelty, but with recognition. The duckling lowered his gaze to the still water beneath him, and there he saw at last what the world had hidden from him for so long. No gray, awkward outcast stared back. In the clear reflection stood a young swan, white-feathered, graceful, and radiant in the spring light. He had not become beautiful in a single instant. He had been becoming himself all along, through sorrow, winter, and exile. The revelation was so gentle and yet so overwhelming that it felt like waking from an old grief he had mistaken for life itself. The other swans curved their necks around him in welcome. Nearby, children standing beneath the blossoming trees pointed toward the water and cried out that the new swan was the most beautiful of all. Once, such words would have seemed impossible. Now they drifted across the spring air like a blessing too large to hold. He remembered the farmyard, the marsh, the cold, the hunger, and all the cruel laughter that had shaped his solitude. Yet none of it could define him any longer. For the first time, he belonged not by pleading for acceptance, but simply by being what he truly was. And so the creature once mocked as the ugly duckling drifted upon the water in the full light of spring, no longer hiding, no longer ashamed. He was not proud in the cruel way of the farmyard, nor eager for revenge. He was simply grateful and humbled by the strange path that had led him there. That is why Andersen's tale remains so beloved. It does not promise that the world will always be kind. It tells something truer than that. Sometimes the soul survives by carrying an invisible dignity through seasons of rejection until the day comes when it finally sees itself clearly.